So we've seen in a previous video that to have a character walk across the screen, we have a series of cells, or in Flash, a series of symbols that are interrelated that comprise a walk cycle. Here is a short walk cycle for a character that I've named Wally. And I've got 7 positions here. Now this is probably a fairly short sequence for even a 12-frame walk cycle. It's going to be a little choppy at 7 positions. To make it smoother, we would simply want to have more drawings maybe in between these. And probably a general rule of thumb that I use is the walk cycle is usually about 1 1/4 to 1.5 seconds. So if you were doing 24 frames per second, you're probably going to have somewhere between 30 and say 36 symbols in that sequence. Here I have 7, but you can see that as they progress through, Wally takes a step forward. So that's 1 walk cycle. Notice the red line at the top, that as Wally walks, he does bob a little bit. So when the legs are not in a straight position, the head and torso will come down a little bit. So one of the common mistakes that amateur animators make is they keep the head and body in the same position and just move the arms and legs. And if you were to watch how somebody walks, you would see that that is not the case, that their head and torso do bob up and down a little bit. So here are the 7 sequences, one after another, in what would be a tracked shot. So when we get through 7, we go back to position 1. And you see Wally walks. And I've slowed this down a little bit. Let me speed it up at the normal rate, which is, I've designed this for 12 frames per second. And it's a pretty fast walk. As I said, usually about 1.5 seconds. So this is only a little more than 1/2 second for Wally to take a step. So it's very, very fast walk. But you get the concept of how this frame-by-frame animation works. So if we wanted to do a set shot where Wally's walking across the stage, we would continue to use this frame-by-frame sequence of 1 through 7 and then repeating. But as we do so, we would move each instance forward, in this case from left to right. And here I'm showing you all the frames combined together that would cause Wally to walk across the stage. Now as you look at this, you'll notice there's some gaps between each cycle. And that is because I really should have had at least 8 symbols. There's one more, so going from 7 to 1, there is a pretty big gap. And as I lined these up, I basically was looking more at the heel positions of the feet to get things to line up smoothly. I wasn't so much concerned about the position of the body and the head as much as I was about the feet. And there's Wally walking across the stage. Now here's another sequence that I built. This one just sort of a skeletal framework of somebody walking. And in this case I have 16 positions for a 12 frame per second animation, and it's pretty smooth. And so I've shown you the 16 positions, and then I've shown you the timeline. And I did this one a little bit differently. Rather than having symbols in the library, I simply drew circles and lines and did a body part on each layer, that I could just simply move the circles and lines from layer to layer and get this rather smooth skeletal cycle. And I would basically do this maybe for a particular character, design a walk for them as a skeleton, and then it becomes pretty easy to draw the character based on the skeletal positions to get my, in this case, 16 symbols. So this is a great exercise to go through in terms of designing a particular character maybe that you're going to use over and over again. So those previous ones were what we call 2-leg walk cycles. For a human, we have 2 legs, but for an animal, we use a 4-leg walk cycle. So I have to animate 4 different legs. And this is my dog Reba. I have drawn her at 8 frames, or 8 positions for her walk cycle. Again, I'm going to be a little bit choppy at 12 frames per second, but it gets the idea across, and it isn't horribly choppy. So there's the 8 positions. Let's watch her walk in a tracked shot. And our eye does a pretty good job of filling in the positions in between those 8 frames. And so like I said, it's not horribly choppy. If I'm going to do this for a client, or this was going to be a broadcast animation, I would certainly make the walk cycle many more positions than just 8. I'd probably do 16. But I can then use that cycle in some animated shorts, such as Reba Goes to Egypt, Reba Visits the Alamo, and Reba Checks Out the Grand Canyon. Now for birds, since they don't walk, they fly, we have a flight cycle rather than a walk cycle. And in this particular case, I've got a goose, and I've only drawn 4 symbols, or in essence 4 cells, or 4 positions for this goose. But I'm going to use a couple of these more than once. So I started with the wings in the down position, and we're going to flap the wings up, so 1, 2, 3, 4, but then I need to bring the wings back down, and I can simply repeat with 3, 2, and then I'm back to position 1. So the cycle here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2. That creates a complete flap of the wings, and we start back over at 1. And you can see the goose flying there in what would be a tracked shot. A cycle might not be a character walking, or we would have maybe a run cycle or a jog cycle, depending on what the character is going to do. But in this case, I have a turning of the head, and I've drawn 5 positions. And in this character, I want to have him turn the head from left to right as he's watching the traffic go past, waiting to cross the street. So there's 9 positions in this cycle, but I only needed to draw 5 of them because positions 2, 3, 4, and 5 I can simply flip horizontally and reuse them as he looks the other direction. So my sequence, going from looking from the right side of your screen to the left side, or his left to his right, would be 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then I would repeat with 2, 3, 4, and 5, but flipped. And then to come back to the opposite side, I would simply repeat those, going 4, 3, 2, still flipped back to 1, and then 2, 3, 4, 5 in their natural position.